The Zarnak Confederation had studied humans for decades, confident they'd mapped every layer of the strange species' social structures, military ranks, political chains, family hierarchies, all logged and categorized with clinical precision. They knew who commanded, who obeyed, and how orders flowed in human systems. Or so they thought, until the day their reconnaissance orb captured a battlefield scene on Terra 3 where chaos reigned after a surprise ambush. Human soldiers lay scattered, screaming for medics, and officers stood stunned, paralyzed by the shock. But into that chaos stepped a figure in white. A doc, they called him. His uniform stained with ash and blood. No badges of rank, no weapon drawn, yet when he spoke, captains fell silent. Lieutenants moved without question, and even the general merely nodded. The doc barked orders with an urgency that cut through the haze of war like a blade. Secure the perimeter. Get me plasma now. He's losing too much blood, move. And men who would never take commands from anyone but their superior officers obeyed with robotic speed, driven by the gravity in his voice and the unspoken authority of someone who held life and death in his hands. From the alien observation dome, High Analyst Karoth blinked his 7 eyes in confusion, scrolling rapidly through their hierarchy matrix, searching for doctor among command designations. But it only appeared in the medical appendix, not command level. Why do they obey him? Another analyst asked, and Karoth could not answer, for the truth was breaking through their rigid data. Humans operated on a dimension of respect, trust, and earned authority that no algorithm had predicted. When the Ikinar doc spoke, they didn't hear a man with rank. They heard the will to protect, the promise to save, the only hope in the middle of fire and screaming. Later, as the footage replayed on loop, Zarnak leadership began to whisper uneasily, realizing that human leadership wasn't just built on symbols and medals, but something deeper, primal even, something that could override hierarchy itself. Because, while a general could send men to die, a doctor could make them live, and in that truth lay a kind of command the aliens could neither mimic nor control. The Zarnak High Council summoned an emergency conclave deep within the orbiting observation vessel Vireth 7, still reeling from what they had witnessed. The unranked, human called Doc, exerting absolute control over a battlefield without issuing a single formal command. Karoth stood at the center of the chamber, his voice echoing as he replayed the sequence again, freezing the frame where the doctor placed his hand on a dying soldier's chest, whispered something imperceptible, and suddenly, every human within earshot snapped into motion, driven not by orders but something invisible and binding. And now the council demanded answers, so Karoth explained the anomaly they had overlooked. Human authority, in rare cases, was not bound to hierarchy or insignia, but to unquantifiable social codes, trust, respect, belief in competence that transcended formal structure, and this doc figure, revered even by superior officers, seemed to hold a sacred, almost spiritual role among them. Disturbed by this revelation, the council authorized a covert mission to extract the doctor, not harm, not kill, but abduct and study, to understand how this anomaly could override centuries of behavioral prediction models. Thus, Operative Thren, master of infiltration, descended to Terra 3 cloaked in shadow, approaching the war camp where the doctor worked ceaselessly under tattered tents filled with groaning soldiers and exhausted medics. And what Thren saw only deepened the mystery. The doc never rested, never hesitated. His hands moved with impossible precision. His voice calmed even the dying. And when a major tried to question his decision, the surrounding soldiers instinctively stepped between them, protective, silent, like guardians of a sacred relic. Thren waited until night, when the fires dimmed and the camp snored gently under the veil of pain, then approached the doctor's tent. But he was already awake, staring, directly at the infiltrator's position with tired but piercing eyes, as if he'd seen through every layer of alien tech. "You're not from around here," the doc said softly, wiping blood from his gloves, and Thren hesitated, the tension in his limbs betraying centuries of conditioning, for he felt no fear from the human, but a strange pull, as if even now, the doctor was assessing him, not as a threat but as a wounded patient hidden under layers of deception. "You came to study me?" the doc asked, not accusing, just curious, and Thren, stunned by the accuracy, lowered his disruptor and nodded. "Then watch," the doc said, standing, stretching his weary limbs. "But don't interfere, because these men need me more than you ever will understand." And over the next hours, Thren did watch the doctor lift dying men with strength that wasn't physical, watched him inspire loyalty without demands, watched him confront a colonel and convince him to reroute entire units for the safety of evacuees, all without raising his voice. By dawn, Thren sent a transmission back to the Vireth 7, simple and brief. "Subject cannot be extracted. Influence exceeds calculable metrics. Recommend observation only." And on the bridge, Karoth read those words in silence, slowly deleting. Every report that had once defined humans as predictable, the aliens had misjudged them, not because they misunderstood military structure, but because they'd underestimated something alien to their own evolution: compassion as authority, skill as command, and the terrifying truth that in human hearts, some titles like Doc held more weight than any rank or crown ever could. The High Council of Zarnak could no longer ignore what had become evident. Humanity was not governed solely by ranks or power, but by something infinitely more volatile: faith, in individuals who proved themselves through action, not designation. And the anomaly named Doc was now officially designated a Class 9 influence node, a category previously thought impossible for any non-governmental human, especially one without a formal command tag. While Vireth 7 recalibrated its models down on Terra 3, Thren remained embedded, not out of duty but choice, observing the man he had once planned to abduct, now quietly assisting him as an unannounced shadow, carrying supplies, recording interactions, silently learning the rhythms of human suffering and healing. It was during one of these quiet midnights that the unthinkable happened. The battlefield shifted again, but this time it wasn't human, on human war. It was a breach, a tear in space-time, the result of an unstable human weapon test miles away, unleashing an interdimensional rift that began swallowing reality at its edges. Soldiers panicked, officers scrambled. The command chain fractured, but there once again the doc stood still, calmly taking in the chaos, issuing no military orders, but guiding the terrified with gestures and simple words. "Move toward the south ridge, stay low. Don't look at the sky, stay focused on my voice. Keep breathing, you're not dying today." And somehow, impossibly, the soldiers listened, the civilians followed. Even drones recalibrated to his signal range, his voice now transmitting through emergency channels without authorization. And still, no one overrode him. From above, Zarnak satellites captured it all: how a man with no rank moved like a fixed point in collapsing space, organizing survival when all else failed, and when the rift expanded toward the base itself, Doc made the choice no one else could. He ran toward it, carrying an unstable containment pack on his back, knowing it might not hold, knowing it might vaporize him instantly, but also knowing no one else had a chance of reaching the epicenter in time. Thren followed him only up to the last ridge, where he stopped, unable to understand why a being with such power over others would risk himself so willingly. And then, before his many eyes, the rift blinked, surged, and collapsed inward, sealed, tight by a pulse from the doc's pack, and the doctor himself, half-burned, half-conscious, was thrown back into the dirt like a discarded puppet, but alive. Hours later, when he woke, he found Thren beside him. Not cloaked, not disguised, just watching exposed alien features shimmering under the morning sun. And the doc, barely able to speak, only smiled and said, "Guess you'll be rewriting more reports," before falling back into unconsciousness. That day, for the first time in Zarnak recorded history, a non-Zarnak entity was granted the honorary title of Command Equivalent. Not because he asked for it, not because he would even care, but because the Council finally understood. Leadership in humans wasn't about structure, it was about trust, sacrifice, and presence in the face of oblivion. The doc, nameless in every chain of command, had become the gravitational center of every crisis he walked into, And for the Zarnak, it shattered everything they thought they knew, not only about humans but about power itself.